Welcome to Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to Issues and Answers. I'm Diane Kinderwater. We're so proud here at KCHF TV and Issues and Answers to introduce you to the candidates who are running for statewide election. Now, we couldn't do all the offices, but we did do Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, Treasurer, and Land Commissioner. Some offices we couldn't do because we didn't have enough airtime, but we're giving you a whole half hour to meet the candidates. And today we're going to be introducing you to Matthew McQueen. He is Representative McQueen from the Galisteo area. He's been in the state legislature for 12 years as a Democrat legislator. And now he wants to run as, or he is running as State Land Commissioner, and he is going to be on the ballot, which is this June 2nd. Again, first time that it's open to independents and declined to state voters. So Republicans can vote on the ballot, Democrats can vote on their ballot, but declined to state and independents get to choose. I think I'll choose the Republican ballot. No, I think I'll choose the Democratic ballot. So you've got a choice. And hopefully introducing you to the candidates will help you make that choice. So please stay with us as we meet Matthew McQueen, Representative McQueen, who wants to be your next land commissioner. We'll be back right after this. Okay, Jeremiah, my successful camera operator, very young man, suggested I say, remind them it's not, well, he didn't say Steve McQueen because he doesn't know who Steve McQueen is. You and I do. But he said, remind them it's not Lightning McQueen, which I don't know, but you might know. Jeremiah knows. But it's Matthew McQueen.
That's correct.
And Matthew, you knew both Steve McQueen. I mean, you knew of both.
Oh, yeah.
Steve McQueen and Lightning McQueen.
Steve McQueen was big when I was a kid, and I used to get asked about it all the time. Like, you'd say your name and people would say, oh, are you related to Steve McQueen? And we'd say, no, we're not, but,
But what about Lightning McQueen?
Well, then Lightning McQueen is, in a Disney movie, and it was named for Steve McQueen. So Steve was in a lot of movies with car chases, and so Disney did a movie about race cars, and they honored Steve McQueen with that name.
Okay, with Lightning McQueen, that's good. Thank you for that little history. Yeah. You've been a state legislator for 12 years, Democrat. Now you're wanting to be the land commissioner.
Right.
What successes did you have as a state legislator that you're most proud of?
So I've, as you say, I've been in the legislature for 12 years. I've been chair of the House Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee for 10 years. And that's always been my focus in the legislature. So I have worked on things like reforming our Department of Game and Fish. As of July 1st, it'll be a Department of Wildlife. So it'll be a more modern approach to wildlife management, not just hunting and fishing.
But what would change then? Not hunting and fishing, which I understand, but what's wildlife management?
So wildlife management can be anything, right? It can be non-game species. It can be birds. It can be butterflies. A lot of times the state is impacted by threatened and endangered species protections, and that's what we want our Department of Game and Fish or Department of Wildlife to be the lead on. Okay. And they would continue to work on those issues.
Issues, but sometimes it sounds a little bit like more government regulation, red tape, and when managing this?
Well, so historically, a lot of Department of Game and Fish funding came from hunting and fishing licenses. So we broadened their mission. We also broadened their funding because we need an agency to work on those other issues because they impact New Mexico. So the agency is not just funded by hunting and fishing licenses anymore. There is also general fund money going to the agency.
So you worked on that. So what is your background, Matt?
I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for over 30 years, and I practice in the area of real property law.
Okay. And it says a conservation attorney.
So that's my specialty. I do a lot of conservation easements. Do you know what a conservation easement is?
Well, I imagine if the state needs access to the state land, they have an easement?
So a conservation easement is a private land use agreement between a private landowner and typically a nonprofit conservation organization where you agree basically not to develop your property. And they do a lot on ranches and other areas. And it's a way of getting a tax benefit in agreement for not developing your property and preserving our landscapes, preserving our working lands, preserving wildlife habitat.
fantastic. That sounds good. That sounds nice. We have a lot of land here in the state of New Mexico.
We do.
Fifth largest landmass in the entire country. But you, as the chair, also worked with the oil and gas industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you right off, do you want our very productive Lee and Eddy counties to leave the state of New Mexico?
Absolutely.
Some people are opposed to the land and gas industry, but they like the money from the oil and gas industry. Where do you fall?
So we appreciate the oil and gas industry. We are grateful for that revenue. It's a huge part of New Mexico and how we fund our state government and our public schools.
But for them to have spoken, and we're not going to dwell on this, but since you worked on that committee, chair of that committee, they felt disrespected to discuss leaving the state. But you worked in the legislature, and you're saying you, as a legislator, did respect them.
You know, I think if you go to the Roundhouse, if you go to the Capitol and talk to legislators, there is widespread respect and appreciation for that industry. We do want them to follow the rules, you know, and there's some push and pull on that. Like, what should the rules be and how strictly should they be enforced? We absolutely will hold the oil and gas industry accountable, right? Their emissions need to be limited. They need to be responsible for appropriately capping and plugging their wells when they're done. They need to clean up their own messes and pay, for the land office, they pay a royalty rate, which is different than tax on private land. They're actually buying those minerals from the state of New Mexico, and we want that to be at a fair market value.
And I think that's what, about 25% now?
So in the Permian Basin, I worked on the bill to increase the royalty rate from 20 to 25%, which is closer to a fair market value and consistent with what Texas charges.
Okay, so that's not the reason they want to leave, not because of your legislation.
I hope they don't want to leave. There was an op-ed in the paper recently from the head of NMOGA, the Mexico Oil and Gas Association, and she very strongly said that they are New Mexicans and they are here to stay.
Okay, very good. As the land commissioner, how would you affect that industry? How could you affect that industry?
So the land office, the core purpose of the land office is to earn money for public schools, universities, and hospitals. They do a very good job. They take in over $2 billion a year. 97% of that money comes from the oil and gas industry. So they are, I view the land office as kind of a property manager, right? They don't own the property, they hold it in trust for New Mexicans, but they work with the oil and gas industry and they need a robust, professional, respectful relationship with that industry because that industry is the one that's sending all that revenue to our state.
To the schools, public schools, universities, and the hospitals. I forgot,
Right.
you know, UNM Hospital receives a lot of their money from the oil and gas industry as well. I keep thinking just public schools, but the universities too.
So the money goes into what's called the Land Grant Permanent Fund, and there are actually 21 beneficiaries to the fund. The majority of the money goes to schools, but like the penitentiary gets a little money. The Interstate Stream Commission gets a little money. There are 21 different beneficiaries, but the lion's share is schools.
And the land office, and the commissioner, you'd be overseeing that office, manages that fund. But if the legislature decides rather to tap it, hasn't the legislature in recent years decided to tap into the corpus of that fund?
So the revenue gets paid into the fund. The fund is actually managed by the State Investment Council, although the land commissioner, by statute, is one of the members of the council. I think there's about 9 members. So they're the ones that oversee the investment of the Land Grant Permanent Fund and our other permanent funds. The Land Grant Permanent Fund is currently at about $38 billion. Our other permanent funds that the SIC oversees total about $70 billion.
But have we tapped into the corpus of the land grants?
So we increased the way the fund works is there's the corpus and it's invested and it grows. And it was paying out at 5% a year for these different purposes. We increased the payout rate by 1.25%, 1.25%, and that was to cover early childhood education.
Oh, that was done quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you like to share with the viewers why you would make a good land commissioner for the state of New Mexico?
So my background is very well suited to being land commissioner. Being a real property attorney for over 30 years. So everything that the land office does with land is something I've already worked on. purchase and sale, leasing, mineral rights, water rights, easements. I mean, these are things I've already done. 12 years experience in the legislature. And the land office still, like, even though they bring in all this money, they don't keep that money. That goes in the permit fund. And then they separately go to the legislature for their budget. So there's still a lot of work to be done at the legislature. And of course, I have that experience. And then with 10 years on the House Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, I have, we are an energy producing state.
Second largest in the country, I hear.
I think that's right. And we can produce energy in different ways, right? So we have the Permian Basin, which is a tremendous resource. We also have tremendous wind, solar, and geothermal potential. So those are things that we want to develop because I personally think those renewable fuels, those renewable sources of energy, that's the energy of the future.
Now we'll see these wind turbines on land, public land or private land, and we see the panels, solar panels and such, but some people say, oh, they kind of scar the land as well. So tell me a little bit about that, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a visual impact, and I think that's something we need to be careful about. I mean, I think we need to protect New Mexico and the things we hold dear in New Mexico, and that includes our landscapes. I proposed and got passed a memorial in the last session to do a renewable energy working group to figure out how we can better site and provide transmission facilities for these resources. And the challenge is you want to be able to do solar farms, you want to be able to do wind farms, you want to be able to move that energy about without spoiling the landscape. And that is a real challenge. Those things, there's some tension between those two goals.
How can we resolve that? Because I think around Klein's Corner, of course, the east side of the state where there's a lot of wind, we see that people say, oh, it is affecting the landscape. So how can that be resolved, do you think? In
my campaign, I have been all over the state, and you drive down 285 at night, and you see those, each turbine has a little red light at the top, and they all flash at the same time. They're synchronized. And you can see the scope of the wind farms. I mean, they're miles and miles of wind turbines. And yeah, that's a real impact. So that's, my proposal was to bring industry and local government and nonprofits together and see if they can figure out a way to increase our transmission and provide, it's a balance, right? You want oversight, but you also want to be able to get things done in a timely manner. You don't want to bog it down in bureaucracy. And that's a tough balance to strike.
What percentage of the production that we have here in New Mexico is from the oil and gas compared to renewables? Is it 97%? I mean, the money is about 97%. Is it the production about the same?
I don't think the production is that slanted. We actually have substantial production of wind and solar already. Most of that energy is exported. Of course, most of our oil and gas is exported for refinement as well. But a lot of that energy is flowing on power lines to Arizona and California.
Because supposedly we don't need it here.
There's, obviously California has higher demand than we have.
What about refineries here? You said a lot of the oil and gas that we extract goes elsewhere because we don't have the refineries here in New Mexico.
So a lot of the refineries are in Texas.
Takes a lot of time to build them here. Or is it because the state of New Mexico is opposed to having refineries?
I toured a refinery in Artesia, so we do have some, but we don't have the same scope that they have over in Texas. And we have existing pipelines for those resources, and that's just sort of the way the market was set up. I think a lot of that fuel is also exported, and of course, Texas is on the Gulf Coast.
So it's able to be transported easily compared to us. We don't want it on I-40 going.
Yeah,
or I-25.
Putting all that in a tanker truck is different than putting it in a pipeline.
Yeah, we don't want that. Regarding water, that precious resource, the land commissioner, what kind of responsibility or effect do you have on water and water rights here in the state?
So water rights in the state of New Mexico are of course, primarily governed by the Office of the State Engineer. And we also have the New Mexico Environment Department that works on water quality and cleanliness issues. The land office is mostly responsible for water under the state trust land, groundwater, some water development, water leasing, and it's much more limited than those other agencies, and it's really just the water that's associated with the land owned by the state and held in trust for the people of New Mexico.
How do you think things will change if you are land commissioner in the next 4 to 8 years? How do you see the state being different if you are at the helm of this land office?
So our current land commissioner is Stephanie Garcia Richard, and she has been very successful. When she's been in office, she's in her 8th year. In her first year, or her first couple of years, they earned $1 billion for the first time. And then a few years later, they earned $2 billion for the first time. And they are potentially on track this year to earn $3 billion, which is really amazing. And that is something I would like to continue. I mean, I view the role of the land office as earning money for education. As we've been talking about, most of that comes from oil and gas. But I also feel the need to diversify that revenue, because we know oil and gas is a boom and bust industry. We know there's a cycle, and we also know there's competition. A lot of the renewable energy is coming in at a lower cost per kilowatt than oil and gas. And if that's
to buy or to produce?
To produce.
To produce.
So if that's the competition in the future, we want to be in a position where we can capitalize on our wind and solar resources.
That means the industries will grow and we'll see more of them.
I believe so. I hope so.
We
have more demand in the country. We're going to need more electricity.
Where will we see that? Where will we see that? You're going to wait for your study group to come back, but where are you thinking, Matthew
So
McQueen?
the land office holds 9 million surface acres, and it's scattered across the state, right? It's not all in one chunk, and you really have to look on a parcel by parcel basis. Sometimes it's a full section, square mile. Sometimes it's a much smaller piece. And it's really just figuring out what is the best use of a particular parcel.
And what's your philosophy about the use?
Again, I think you need a balance, right? There's some parcels that the best use is going to be outdoor recreation, hunting, fishing. Maybe there's a sensitive resource that you need to leave alone. Maybe there's a dangerous situation. Maybe there's an old mine, a uranium tailing, something like that you need people to stay away from. But there are other parcels, not only that, we have the Permian Basin, which is largely leased out for oil and gas development, but we have other parcels in and around communities that could be used for commercial projects, or it could be used for housing projects. And I'm someone who thinks we need more housing in New Mexico. I would like more New Mexicans to have the opportunity to own their own home, and that's something the land office can help with.
By swapping other land for the land around the urban areas?
Sometimes you can do swaps, or sometimes if the land office already owns property in an urban area, it can work with a developer to do those projects.
Regarding back to the wind turbines, the farms, the wind farms, and the solar farms, are they commercial ventures? Does the state of New Mexico own some of them, or mainly private?
They're lessees. If they're on state trust land, they're lessees. A lot of those are on private land. And the land office competes with private landowners for those projects. So if the wind is fairly particular where they want to be. They know where the good sites are. We have obviously a very sunny state. I think you can put solar panels on a lot of different places. And if we want those on state trust land, that's, we're competing in the open market for those projects.
So most of the solar farms are where? In the central part of the state? Kind of around?
I think there's farms of different sizes. I mean, we have rooftop solar, like on individual homes and businesses. We have community solar, which is sort of in between maybe 40 acres.
Where are some of those?
Scattered across the state. They like to be located near transmission lines. And then there's utility scale. And like in my House district right now, I got redistricted and I'm more compact than I used to be. But there are 3 proposals in my House district. There are 70 House districts in the state for utility scale solar farms.
That means acres and acres of solar panels?
So the biggest one is about 2 square miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
The smallest one is, I think, 600 acres.
2 square miles?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And so who's going to decide if they're going to be able to be in the Galisteo area?
So that's the Diamond Tail project. That's actually across the county line in Sandoval County. I think they have initial approval from Sandoval County, but there are residents who are upset about the visual impact, like you said. And it's along 14, which is a scenic byway, and they don't necessarily want to see 2 square miles of solar panels. So that's one of those things we need to work our way through.
So when you say we, who is that? Who's going to make this decision?
Primarily these decisions on siting of the facilities are local land use decisions. So it's a county commission. It doesn't have to go to the PRC, the Public Regulation Commission. So it's really mostly a local decision.
Between Sandoval County, mainly Sandoval County.
That particular project is in Sandoval County. There are 2 other projects in Santa Fe County.
Oh boy. So what are your constituents saying here, Matthew McQueen?
There's one of the projects, the AES project, has had a lot of opposition. It was approved by the county commission 4-1, I believe. I think they are appealing that decision to district court. And the other project isn't as far along, and it's in a more rural area. I believe there is some local opposition, but it's not as organized or vocal as the opposition to the AES project.
Matthew McQueen is a candidate for land commissioner. He's a Democrat running for the statewide office. What would you like to share with the viewers that I haven't pointed out yet? I've got a lot of my questions answered. Again, you said your background as an attorney, working in conservation and easements and such lends itself to what the job is. Oftentimes people think that it's, they have to be a rancher or a farmer or a hunter or a fisherman to run the land office. What are your feelings on that?
So the land office, it does hunting and fishing, but it doesn't earn a lot of money at that. It does agriculture, and the agricultural users are really the stewards of most of the acreage, and we need boots on the ground, eyes on the property to take care of that land. But the land office does a lot more, right? It's basically a giant land management job. The agency is about 190 staff people. It's a $27 million budget. It's 9 million surface acres and 13 million mineral estate.
How many?
13 million mineral estate. And most of that is under the 9 million, so there's overlap. But it's a huge.
Well, what 13 million? What minerals are we talking about?
So everything, the mineral estate, everything under the land. That's how we do oil and gas leasing. We own the hydrocarbons, and we lease out the right to develop those hydrocarbons.
But what minerals do we have?
It's a big state, right? And we have different minerals in different areas. There is mining on state trust land, but of course most of the income is coming from oil and gas. Okay. Oil and gas are minerals, when they're under the ground.
Really? They're considered the mineral. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking of the silver that we used to have.
No, not necessarily like precious metals, and there is some of that, and there's potentially some rare earth minerals, and then sometimes they lease out property for gravel mining. Gravel's a mineral.
I think of the mineral on top of the ground is the gravel. Right. Yes, we have a lot of those around Cuesta, I think in northern New Mexico. You're endorsed by the animal protection voters.
That's correct.
Regarding your wildlife corridor and Wingay, your commitment to tribal consultations. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I'm endorsed by Sierra Club and Animal Protection Voters, Wingay Pueblo, former land commissioners Ray Powell and Jim Baca. And these are all people that have looked at my record and think that I've done a good job.
Ray Powell, I haven't heard of him for a while.
He's still around?
Yes.
And he was land commissioner for like 3.5 terms. I don't think there's anyone in New Mexico history that's been land commissioner more than Ray Powell.
You also passed some legislation efforts to ban traps, snares, and poison on public lands. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we had situations where people would be out hiking and their dogs get stuck in traps. And and trapping is, you set a trap and you leave it, and it's fairly indiscriminate. So we banned trapping on public lands. It's still allowed on private lands.
Okay. Matthew McQueen, again, Democrat candidate, running this June 2nd primary. We've got 2 minutes left. What would you like to tell the voters out there? Stuff that they need.
So for me, this is about public service. I've been in the legislature for 12 years. That's all about public service. As you know, our legislators don't get paid. So I'm trying to make New Mexico a better place, and I think I can do that at the land office.
See any dramatic changes? I mean, you said you want to continue on what the current land commissioner does, is raising more money for education. I mean, she started with $1 billion. We might be up to $3 billion. Continuing that route, what would it take to continue on that route? Raising fees, raising grazing fees, raising oil and gas royalties? What does it take to do that?
So, I mean, if you think about it, they get 97% of their income from oil and gas. So you're getting 97% of your income from effectively the mineral estate. And you have 9 million acres of surface land that you can use. We can do more projects on the surface estate, and that includes renewables, that includes commercial, and that includes housing.
So we may see more of that in the future.
I think we should.
We should. Very good. Thank you so much again for serving in the state legislature for 12 years, all that you've done for the state of New Mexico, and now that you're wanting to run for State Land Commission. And again, the race is June 2nd. And that's the primary, but the general?
November 3rd.
November 3rd. And again, first time we've got the declined estate and independents voting.
In the primary.
In the primary.
They, of course, can vote in the general.
Very good. Again, we're encouraging everyone to get out there, and we thank KCHF TV and Issues and Answers for bringing you Matthew McQueen, who is a Democrat running in the primary. And again, that election is Tuesday, June 2nd. Make it your choice, your voice. You can be heard, but you have to vote. Thanks again for watching. I'm Diane Kinderwater. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program, email us at info@kchftv.org or call us at 505-345-1991. Join us again for Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater.